I never thought love could feel like a death sentence, but the day I met him, I heard the sound of chains locking around my heart. "You're playing with fire," my brother warned me, his voice trembling with fear. But how could I resist those dark, haunted eyes that seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 secrets? Let me take you back to where it all began. My name is Ayesha, a 24-year-old from Lahore, Pakistan, raised in a modest home where tradition was our anchor. My days were simple, helping my mother stitch intricate patterns onto shawls, laughing with my cousins under the mango tree, dreaming of a life beyond the walls of our neighborhood. I wasn't looking for trouble, but trouble found me the night I crossed paths with Reza. It was a humid evening at the local bazaar, the air thick with the scent of spices and grilled meat. I was bargaining for a bolt of silk when I felt someone watching me. Turning around, I saw him, tall, broad-shouldered, with a scar slicing through his left eyebrow. His presence seemed to quiet the chaos of the market. Reza was Iranian, a stranger in our city, and whispers followed him like shadows. Some called him a businessman, others a criminal. To me, he was a mystery I couldn't ignore. He approached me that night, his voice low and rough like gravel underfoot. "You dropped this," he said, holding out a small silver bangle I hadn't even noticed was missing. His fingers brushed mine as I took it, and I swear the world tilted for a moment. We talked, or rather, he asked questions. About the fabric I was buying, the songs drifting from a nearby stall, the way my eyes lit up when I spoke of poetry. I should have walked away, but his intensity was a magnet, pulling me closer. Over the next few weeks, Reza became a constant in my life. He'd appear at the bazaar, always at dusk, as if the fading light hid his edges. He'd bring me tiny gifts, a jasmine flower, a book of Rumi's poems, a carved wooden bird. Each gesture felt like a confession, though he never spoke of his past. My family noticed the change in me, the way I'd linger by the window, waiting for a glimpse of him. My mother's brow furrowed with worry, but she said nothing. My brother, Imran, wasn't so silent. "He's not one of us, Aisha," he said one night, gripping my arm. "You don't know what he's capable of." I brushed him off, thinking love could conquer suspicion. Reza and I stole moments together. Late-night walks by the canal, whispered conversations in the shadow of an old mosque. He told me stories of Tehran, of mountains that touched the stars, of a life he'd left behind. But there were gaps in his tales, silences that felt heavy with unspoken truths. I ignored them, drunk on the way he looked at me like I was the only thing keeping him tethered to this world. Then came the first crack in our fragile paradise. It was a Friday evening, and Reza had promised to meet me near the old bridge. I waited, the minutes stretching into an hour. The air grew colder, and so did my heart. Just as I turned to leave, I saw him, hurrying toward me, his face bruised, blood staining the collar of his shirt. "What happened?" I gasped, reaching for him. He pulled away, his eyes darting to the darkness behind us. "Nothing you need to know," he said, his voice sharp. "Go home, Aisha, now." I didn't move. Something in his tone, a mix of fear and command, rooted me to the spot. "Reza, tell me the truth," I pleaded. He hesitated, then grabbed my hand, pulling me into an alley where the streetlights couldn't reach. "You want the truth," he whispered, his breath ragged. "I'm not a good man. I've done things that would make you run if you knew." My pulse raced, but I didn't flinch. "I'm not afraid," I said, though my voice trembled. He laughed, a bitter sound that cut through me. "You should be," he said, stepping back. "Stay away from me, Aisha, for your own sake." And then he was gone, swallowed by the night. I stood there, alone, my mind spinning. What had he done? Who was he running from? The questions gnawed at me, but my heart refused to let go. I told myself it was a misunderstanding, that love could fix whatever was broken in him. But deep down, I felt the weight of something dangerous settling over us, like storm clouds gathering on the horizon. That night, as I lay in bed, I heard my phone buzz. A single message from an unknown number. "He's not who you think. Leave him before it's too late." My blood ran cold. Who sent it? And what did they know that I didn't? That message haunted me, replaying in my mind like a song I couldn't shake. Who was watching us, and why did they care enough to warn me? I stared at my phone, the anonymous words glowing in the dark. He's not who you think. Leave him before it's too late. My first instinct was to call Razor, to demand answers, but something stopped me. Fear, maybe. Or worse, doubt. What if I didn't want to hear the truth? The next morning, I woke with a heaviness in my chest. The world felt different, like the colours had dulled overnight. I went through my routine, helping my mother with breakfast, folding laundry, smiling at my cousin's jokes, but my thoughts were elsewhere, tangled in Razor's bruised face and that cryptic warning. I kept checking my phone, half expecting another message, but it stayed silent. Too silent. I hadn't seen Razor since that night by the bridge, and the absence of him was a physical ache. Part of me wanted to run to him to prove I could handle whatever he was hiding, but another part, quieter and colder, whispered that I was in over my head. My brother Imran noticed my distraction at dinner. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he said, his eyes narrowing. "It's him, isn't it? That Iranian." I shook my head, forcing a smile, but Imran wasn't fooled. "Aisha, listen to me," he said, lowering his voice so our parents wouldn't hear. "I've heard things. About him. Bad things." "What things?" I snapped, louder than I meant to. My mother glanced over, but I ignored her. Imran leaned closer, his face tight with worry. "People talk," he said. "They say he's tied to dangerous men, smugglers, maybe worse. You think he's just a loner with a sad story? Wake up, Ayesha. Men like him don't wander into Lahore for love." His words stung, slicing through the fragile hope I'd been clinging to. I wanted to argue, to defend Razor, but the image of his bloodied shirt flashed in my mind, and I faltered. "You don't know him," I said weakly, but Imran just shook his head and walked away. That night, I lay awake, replaying every moment with Razor. The way he dodged questions about his family, the way his eyes scanned every room like he was waiting for a threat. Had I been blind? Or was I letting rumours poison something real? 2 days later, I couldn't take the silence anymore. I went to the bazaar, hoping to find him where we'd first met. The market was alive with its usual chaos, vendors shouting, children darting through the crowd, but it felt hollow without him. I lingered by the silk stall, my heart sinking with every passing minute. Just as I turned to leave, I heard his voice. "Ayesha." I spun around and there he was, looking worse than before. His face was pale, a fresh cut above his cheekbone, and his jacket hung loose, like he hadn't eaten in days. "Where have you been?" I demanded, my voice shaking with relief and anger. He didn't answer right away, just took my arm and led me to a quiet corner behind a tea stall. "I told you to stay away," he said, his eyes searching mine. "Why are you here?" "Because I deserve the truth," I shot back. "You disappear, show up looking like you've been in a war, and I'm supposed to just forget you. Who's after you, Razor? And don't lie to me." He flinched, and for a moment I thought he'd walk away again. But then he sighed, a sound so heavy it seemed to carry years of regret. "You're too stubborn for your own good," he said, almost smiling. "Fine, but not here." We ended up at a small, dimly lit cafe on the edge of the city, the kind of place where no one asks questions. Over bitter coffee, Razor started talking. Not everything, but enough to crack the wall between us. He told me he'd come to Lahore to escape a life he couldn't outrun. In Tehran, he'd worked for men who dealt in things he wouldn't name, things that left blood on his hands. "I thought I could start over," he said, staring into his cup. "But they don't let you go that easily." "Who's they?" I pressed, my stomach twisting. He didn't answer, just glanced at the door like he expected it to burst open. "Ayesha, I care about you," he said instead, his voice low. "That's why I'm telling you to walk away. You're too good for this. For me." His words were a plea, but they only made me angrier. "You don't get to decide that," I said. "I'm not some fragile thing you can push away when it suits you." He looked at me, then really looked, and I saw something break in him. "You don't understand," he whispered. "If they find out about you, they'll use you to get to me. They've done it before." My breath caught. "Before?" I echoed. He nodded, his jaw tight. Her name was Layla. She was like you, bright, fearless. They took her to punish me. I won't let that happen again. The cafe seemed to shrink around us, the air too thick to breathe. Layla, a name that felt like a blade. I wanted to ask more, who she was, what happened to her, but the pain in his eyes stopped me. Instead, I reached for his hand, ignoring the voice in my head screaming to run. "I'm not her," I said, "and I'm not leaving you." For a moment, he let himself hold on, his grip tight, desperate. But then his phone buzzed and his face changed, hardened, like a door slamming shut. He pulled away, checking the screen, his expression unreadable. "I have to go," he said, standing abruptly. "Razor, wait," I started, but he was already moving, tossing a few bills on the table. "Stay out of sight, Aisha," he said over his shoulder. "Please." I sat there, stunned, the weight of his words sinking in. Layla, danger that felt closer than ever. When I finally left the cafe, the streets seemed darker, every shadow a threat. I told myself I could handle it, that love was worth the risk. But as I walked home, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. That night, my phone buzzed again. Another message, this time with a photo, a blurry shot of Reza standing in an alley talking to a man with a gun tucked into his belt. The text read, "You were warned." My hands shook as I stared at the image, my heart pounding so loud I thought it would wake the house. Who was Reza, really? And what had I gotten myself into? I couldn't stop staring at that photo. The grainy image of Reza with that armed stranger burned into my mind. My fingers trembled as I clutched my phone, the words, "You were warned," pulsing like a heartbeat. Who was sending these messages? Were they trying to protect me? Or trap me? I wanted to scream, to throw the phone across the room, but instead, I sat frozen on my bed, the silence of the house pressing against me like a weight. Reza's secrets were unraveling, and I was caught in the threads, unsure if I was the fool or the fighter. The next morning, I barely recognized myself in the mirror. Dark circles under my eyes, my face drawn tight with worry. I hadn't slept, my mind replaying every word Reza had said about Layla, about the men who wouldn't let him go. I wanted to confront him, to demand the whole truth, but fear gnawed at me. What if the truth was worse than I could handle? What if loving him meant losing myself? I avoided the bazaar that day, too afraid I'd see him. Or someone else, someone watching from the shadows. Instead, I stayed home, helping my mother with chores, hoping routine would anchor me. But my thoughts kept drifting, and my mother noticed. "Aisha, what's wrong?" she asked, her voice soft but firm as she kneaded dough. I opened my mouth to lie, to say I was fine, but the words wouldn't come. "It's nothing," I mumbled, turning away. She didn't push, but her eyes lingered, full of questions I wasn't ready to answer. By evening, the walls of our house felt like they were closing in. I needed air, answers, something to break the spiral in my head. Against every instinct, I slipped out and headed to the canal where Reza and I used to walk. It was reckless, I knew, but I couldn't stay still, couldn't keep pretending I could ignore the storm brewing around us. The water shimmered under the streetlights, and for a moment, I let myself remember the nights we'd spent there, his voice weaving stories that made the world feel infinite. Now those memories felt like lies. I didn't expect him to be there, but when I saw his silhouette by the bridge, my heart lurched. He was pacing, his shoulders hunched, a cigarette glowing faintly in his hand. I almost called out, but something stopped me. A flicker of movement in the distance. Two men stood at the edge of the path, their faces hidden in the dark, watching him. My breath caught, and I ducked behind a tree, my pulse racing. Was this who he was running from? Were they the ones sending me those messages? Reza didn't see them. Or if he did, he didn't care. He tossed the cigarette into the canal and started walking, his steps quick and purposeful. The men followed, keeping their distance but never losing sight of him. I should have gone home, should have run as far as I could, but my feet moved on their own, trailing them through the quiet streets. I told myself I just needed to know, needed to see what he was hiding. But deep down, I was terrified of what I'd find. They led me to a rundown warehouse on the outskirts of the city, its windows boarded up, the air thick with the smell of oil and decay. Razor slipped inside and the men waited outside, one of them lighting a cigarette, the other checking his phone. I crouched behind a stack of crates, my heart pounding so loud I was sure they'd hear it. Minutes passed, then voices, angry, sharp, echoed from inside. I couldn't make out the words, but Razor's tone was unmistakable, a mix of defiance and desperation. Then a crash, like glass shattering. I flinched, biting my lip to keep from gasping. The men outside exchanged a glance but didn't move. Moments later, Razor stumbled out, blood trickling from his temple, his jacket torn. He didn't see me, didn't see anything, just kept walking, his fists clenched. The men followed again and I stayed frozen, my mind screaming at me to run, to forget him, to save myself. But I couldn't. Not yet. When I finally made it home, my brother Imran was waiting, his face like stone. "Where were you?" he demanded, grabbing my arm. I yanked away, too shaken to argue. "Out," I said, my voice hollow. He stared at me, his eyes searching mine, and I knew he saw the truth, or part of it. "You're destroying yourself, Ayesha," he said quietly. "And for what? A man who'll get you killed?" I wanted to scream that he was wrong, that Razor was worth it, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I pushed past him and locked myself in my room, tears burning my eyes. The next day, I found Razor at the cafe where we'd talked before. He looked worse than ever, hollow-eyed, his hands shaking as he lit a cigarette. "You shouldn't be here," he said when he saw me. But there was no fight in his voice, just exhaustion. "Neither should you," I shot back, sitting across from him. "What happened last night, Razor? Who were those men?" His jaw tightened, and for a moment I thought he'd shut me out again. But then he leaned forward, his voice barely a whisper. "They're the ones I owe," he said. "I thought I could pay them off, start clean, but they don't want money anymore. They want me." "For what?" I asked, my voice trembling. He didn't answer, just looked at me with eyes that held too much pain. "Ayesha, I tried to keep you out of this," he said. "But they know about you now. They've seen us together." My blood ran cold. "What does that mean?" I whispered. He reached for my hand, then stopped himself, his fingers curling into a fist. "It means you're not safe," he said, "and it's my fault." I wanted to scream, to demand why he hadn't told me sooner, why he'd let me fall so deep. But before I could, the door of the cafe swung open, and one of the men from last night walked in. He didn't look at us, just ordered a tea and sat near the window, but his presence was a blade against my skin. Razor's face hardened. "Go," he said under his breath. "Now." I shook my head, tears spilling over. "I'm not leaving you," I said, my voice breaking. He grabbed my wrist, his grip bruising. "You don't get it, Ayesha. They'll hurt you to break me. They did it with Layla and I won't." His voice cracked and he let go, shoving his chair back. "Run," he said, and this time I did. I don't remember how I got home, only the blur of streets and the taste of salt on my lips. My mother was there, her arms pulling me close, but I couldn't speak, couldn't explain. All I could see was Razor's face, the way it shattered when he said Layla's name. And then my phone buzzed. A new message, no number, just 5 words that turned my world to ash. "You can't save him now." Those 5 words, "you can't save him now," cut deeper than any blade. They echoed in my head as I sat curled up on my bed, the world outside muffled by the storm inside me. My mother knocked softly, asking if I was okay, but I couldn't answer. How could I explain that the man I loved was a ghost, slipping through my fingers, dragging me into a darkness I didn't understand? I wanted to hate Razor for pulling me into his chaos, but my heart refused, clinging to the memory of his touch, his voice, the way he looked at me like I was his only light. Days passed in a haze. I stopped going to the bazaar, stopped answering my phone. My brother Imran watched me like I was a bomb about to go off, his silence louder than any lecture. My mother tried to coax me back to life with cups of chai and gentle questions, but I was somewhere else, trapped in the moment Razor told me I wasn't safe. I kept seeing that man in the cafe, his casual indifference more terrifying than any threat. I kept hearing Razor's voice crack when he spoke of Layla, and I wondered if I was next, a name he'd whisper in regret. One night, unable to sleep, I slipped out to the canal again. It was foolish, reckless. but I needed to feel him, to find some trace of the man I'd fallen for before the world turned upside down. The water was still, reflecting a sky heavy with stars, and for a moment I let myself pretend we were back there, laughing, dreaming untouched by fear. But then I heard footsteps, slow and deliberate, and my breath caught. I turned, expecting Reza, but it was Imran, his face etched with worry and anger. "You're killing yourself, Ayesha," he said, his voice low but fierce. "And for what? A man who's already gone." I wanted to argue, to tell him he didn't understand, but the truth in his eyes stopped me. "I saw him," Imran continued, stepping closer. "Yesterday at the edge of town. He was with them. Those men. He didn't look like a prisoner, Ayesha. He looked like he belonged." His words were a punch to my chest. "You're lying," I whispered, but my voice shook. Imran grabbed my shoulders, forcing me to look at him. "I'm not," he said. "I followed him because I knew you wouldn't listen. He's not running from them, Aisha. He's one of them. Whatever he told you, about Layla, about wanting to be free, it's a lie to keep you hooked." I pulled away, tears burning my eyes. "You don't know him," I said, but the words felt hollow, like I was trying to convince myself. Imran softened, his anger giving way to pain. "I know you," he said, "and I know you deserve better than this." He left me there alone with the stars and the weight of his words, and for the first time, I let myself wonder if he was right. The next morning I made a choice. I couldn't keep living in the shadow of Reza's secrets, waiting for a truth that might destroy me. I went to the cafe, the place where we'd shared our last real moment, hoping for a sign, a reason to hold on. It was empty, the air stale with the scent of old coffee. I sat at our table, tracing the scratches in the wood, and that's when I saw it. A small folded note tucked under a napkin, my name scrawled in Reza's jagged handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. "Aisha," it read, "if you're reading this, I'm already gone. I tried to protect you, but I failed. You were my chance at something good, something clean, but men like me don't get redemption. Don't look for me. Don't trust anyone. Live your life and forget me. I'm sorry." At the bottom, a single line, smudged like he'd hesitated. "I loved you." I read it again and again, each word a wound and a release. He was gone. Not dead, maybe, but out of my reach, swallowed by the life he couldn't escape. I waited for the tears, for the rage, but all I felt was quiet, like a storm had passed and left me standing in its wreckage. I folded the note and slipped it into my pocket, a piece of him I'd carry but never chase. When I got home, my mother was waiting, her eyes gentle but knowing. "You're different today," she said, brushing a strand of hair from my face. I nodded, unable to speak, and she pulled me close, her warmth grounding me. For the first time in weeks, I let myself breathe, let myself imagine a life beyond Reza's shadow. I started small, returning to the bazaar, not for him, but for me, for the colours and chaos that used to spark joy. I picked up my needle again, stitching patterns with my mother, each thread a step toward healing. My cousins dragged me into their laughter, and slowly I felt pieces of myself coming back together. Imran never mentioned Reza again, but I saw the relief in his eyes, the quiet pride when I smiled. Months later, I heard a rumour that Reza had been seen in Karachi or maybe Istanbul, tangled in the same dangerous world. I didn't know if it was true, and I didn't try to find out. His note was enough, a truth I could hold without breaking. I thought of Layla sometimes, wondering who she'd been, what she'd dreamed of before she became a ghost in his story. I hoped she'd found peace wherever she was. Love, I learned, isn't always a fairy tale. Sometimes it's a fire that burns you clean, leaving scars but also strength. I don't hate Reza, not anymore. He gave me a story I'll never forget, a lesson I'll carry forever. To choose myself, even when it hurts. I'm still Aisha, still stitching my life together, thread by thread under the same stars that watched us fall apart. And somehow that's enough.